Colin, have you noticed anything up with the studio lately?
Not really. What are you talking about?
Well, I was trying to put graphics in earlier for the show tonight, and every time I put a graphic in, it'd turn out green. Whenever I type in the letters M, S, and U, they just wouldn't appear in the graphic, and anytime I put a picture in from anyone from the Iowa offense, the first half would disappear, except Caleb Johnson for some reason.
That is really strange. Any idea why?
I've got a theory that Elise and Tara brought back a ghost from Michigan State.
God bless. There's a chance they might have. I mean, that logic might be there.
What else could be the solution for all of our graphics going crazy?
I couldn't come up with anything else.
But I think I might know why he's mad. All of us picked Iowa to win last week, and you're still parading that belt around like you won something.
I mean, but it's mine.
No, it's not. And I think that might be why the Michigan State ghost is upset at us.
So what are you saying?
I think we just try to leave it here. Hope maybe that fixes the problem somehow if we just leave it on the table, and hopefully the Michigan State ghost will be at ease.
Are you sure that's the only way?
Pretty darn. I don't have any other solutions.
Show's got to go on, right?
Show's got to go on.
I'll give up the belt for this week. I'll see you next week.
Picture, you're trying to prepare to do your best, and it's a week-by-week assessment. You just really have to stay focused on that, and the teams that do that the best probably are the teams that are going to be most successful.
Yeah, Colin, after last week's loss to Michigan State, Iowa's chances to make the new 12-team playoff and the Big Ten championship game both look pretty slim.
I know, with the expansion of the college football playoff, I had a lot of hopes coming into the season, but of course the gut feeling's still there, and of course they're going to miss it.
Yeah, Colin, now it's time for the Hawkeyes to just put their heads down and keep trying to get as many wins as they can for the rest of the season to get a better bowl game. But hello, everyone. Welcome to Before the Kickoff, the Daily Iowans weekly pregame show and your #1 source for Hawkeye sports. I'm Brady Barron.
And I'm Colin Carithers. We're going to break down everything you need to know before the kickoff.
Today, we'll take a look at a couple of Hawkeyes who used to be Wildcats, look back on the history between Iowa and Northwestern, and of course, give our predictions for this weekend's game.
Yeah, but first, Brady, I gotta ask you a question. Are you afraid of scary movies at all?
Yeah, a little bit. I am a little afraid.
Then I'm gonna ask that you close your eyes for this upcoming recap. Iowa taking the trip out to MSU in a game that looked to be pretty easy at first for Iowa at Spartan Stadium. Boy, was it anything but that. On the road, Michigan State starting off with the ball. They would score on that opening drive, but how would Iowa respond? Well, you can't think of anything better than a punt, which they had half the game. Then a little bit of controversy here in the first quarter. A little opponent entering guarding guy in the back of the end zone. Looked to be PI there, wasn't called, probably was. He never turned his head, but nonetheless, either way, he would get an interception on the next drive in the middle of the field on his first career start for the Hawkeyes. Good looks from the defense there, but how would the offense capitalize off this? Well, a pass behind Reese Vanderzee there would set up for a long field goal from Drew Stevens, who's been phenomenal for the Hawkeyes, but he misses wide right. So some bad looks there from the special teams and offense, but a guy who could make it all game, Jonathan Kim, had 2 field goals here and set his team up to go up 12-0 into the half. You see this if you're Iowa. You got to turn things around in the second half. Well, Caden McNamara does right there. Touchdown to Reese Vanderzee, and then Michigan State, they see that. They've got to come back with one of their own, keeping a comfortable lead, finding a man in the back of the end zone. Michigan State, Aiden Childs falling on all cylinders all game. Then Brendan Sullivan returns with one himself towards the outside. And if you're a fan from Michigan State, you got to be thinking, will this team ever go away? Well, guy never went away. Jonathan Kim, again, just skeeving over the field goal there. Another one. He would help his team score on all but 2 drives in the game. And as things start to look bleak, Caden McNamara throws it in the middle of nowhere, right to a defender for Michigan State. An interception that would set them up for a field goal. And things start to look real dark for the Hawkeyes out in East Lansing. But at 1 minute, Caleb Johnson putting Iowa City and the entire Hawkeye offense on his back for 75 yards. First play of the drive, turning a touchback into a touchdown. And when things just start to look bad, the offense pulls you right back in if you're an Iowa fan. But would they continue that momentum? This past year from Caden McNamara, again missing the mark. Would say otherwise for this comeback chances for Iowa. So with this touchdown again from the Spartans, pulling away even further from this Iowa team. They get a few more chances in the fourth quarter, but again, Cade McNamara could not hit his receivers all game, and Iowa falls in an upset loss to Michigan State, 30-20. Brady, you go ahead and put your hands down now. The horror movie's over, okay?
That's it? They can't hurt me anymore?
I hope they can't hurt you any more than what we just saw.
All right, Colin. Well, now it's time to send it over to Sydney Goldberg in the newsroom with some information on a couple of former Wildcats wearing new colors.
Thanks, Brady. 2 current Hawkeyes will be playing against their former team this weekend. Quarterback Brendan Sullivan, in his sophomore year with Northwestern, appeared in 8 games and started in 4. At Iowa, he is yet to start a game and is most well known for coming in the game in the red zone. Kirk spoke on his better mobility and speed in comparison to McNamara and believes this is beneficial for the team. Another former Wildcat junior, Jacob Gill, has started all 7 games this season as wide receiver. Gill has really built his resume this season, leading the team in receiving yards in 3 different games. The team is banking on these 2 former Wildcats to recall key insights from their days in the Wildcat program in order to lead them in taking down the Wildcats.
Whatever knowledge and information that they can come up with or that they think can help the team, I'm sure that they're going to say that.
I'll definitely try to get in their ear, see if I can get like some snap counts or something like that, help with the protection, try to help my guys out a little bit.
So the Hawkeyes are really looking for a redemption this week after coming off last week's loss and hope they can get it with the help of their opponent's former teammates. That's all I have for now, so I'm going to send it back over to Brady in the studio.
Thanks, Sydney. Colin, Brendan Sullivan, and Jacob Gill could both be a valuable asset for the Hawkeyes this weekend.
Hey, and I've been scoping that since day one. Jacob Gill, my player to watch for the year, I couldn't agree more.
Hit the nail on the head right there, Colin. But now it's time to send it out to DITV's resident historian, Elise Gann, in the classroom for a look back at the history between Iowa and Northwestern.
Thanks, guys. As it is spooky season, I'll match the mood and share some spooky knowledge of my own, such as Iowa's frighteningly huge domination over Northwestern throughout the years. We'll start with their most recent scare as they flew the W over the Wildcats in the friendly confines of Wrigley Field just last season. However, it was scary for both teams. Northwestern held Iowa to only 169 yards, but the Hawkeyes gave the Wildcats a taste of their own medicine by allowing 170 yards and limiting them to 29 yards and 2 first downs in the first half. This was the most Iowa football game you could get. Eventually, in the third quarter, the Hawks landed in the end zone to take the lead 7-0 up until Northwestern battled back later in the fourth, tying the game with a touchdown of their own. The game stayed tight until the end when Drew Stevens kicked a last-minute 52-yard field goal right down Broadway to win the game for the Hawkeyes 10-7, giving them their 3rd win over Northwestern in a row. Pretty scary stuff for the Cats there, but that game was like a cheesy 1980s horror movie compared to the rest of the series between these 2 teams. Let's rewind even further. The Big Ten series started on October 16, 1897 in Evanston, Illinois, where the Hawkeyes took the win 12-6, setting the tone for how this series would continue. Iowa currently stands in front at 54, 28, and 3, leading Northwestern by an absolute landslide. From 1974 to 1994, the Hawkeyes beat the Wildcats 21 times in a row. Are you kidding me? 21 times. For their homecoming game, the Hawks will take on the Cats for the 86th time in history in hopes of having a repeat of their 2022 homecoming game, in which they beat Northwestern 33-13. Iowa is 62, 44, and 5 in homecoming games with an 8-4 mark against Northwestern. The Hawkeyes will look to scare Northwestern off for their 4th time in a row and 55th time overall tomorrow. That's all I have, so now I'll send it back to Colin and Brady in the studio.
Thanks, Elise. Yeah, Colin, this is one of those Big Ten matchups that Iowa's kind of had the upper hand in for a while now.
Absolutely has. We heard that from Elise, and I'm not going to lie, I wasn't really scared by that at all. As an Iowa fan, I'm not sure I'm going to be scared by this matchup this year as well.
Yeah, speaking of this matchup, Colin, I got the chance to talk with Henry Freeman, sports editor for the Daily Northwestern, about the Wildcats roster.
Jack Lausch is in making his probably 5th or 6th start this season, and really still gaining that experience. But I've seen him demonstrate exceptional ability on the ground. He's been able to escape when a play breaks down. He's been able to recover and scramble for positive yardage. I think that's his biggest strength. And at some points, he's got some great accuracy on some deep passes, throwing some pinpoint balls.
We're going to have to key in on him. He has a good group of receivers, good group of running backs, and some weapons around him. So that's going to pose a challenge for us, a challenge that we're looking forward to.
Iowa struggled last week with Aiden Child's rushing ability from the quarterback spot, and Lausch might scare the Hawkeye defense in a similar fashion. Since taking over the starting spot, Lausch has just under 200 yards on the ground and a touchdown. But he has shown that he's prone to putting the ball on the ground, as he has 3 fumbles on the year. But this week, Lausch could be without one of his main weapons.
The wide receivers have been unable to really create separation. The passing game has really been inconsistent. The offense as a whole has been really inconsistent. The top wide receiver, A.J. Henning, went down last week against Wisconsin, and it was a bad injury. The head coach of Northwestern, David Braun, when we asked him in the presser about A.J. Henning's status, he said he's glad for the long-term health that they turned out okay, which is coach speak for it's not looking good for the season.
Henning has been frighteningly effective this year for Northwestern's passing game. While the Wildcats rank near the bottom in the Big Ten in every receiving category, the 5'10 senior has hauled in 3 of the team's 4 passing touchdowns so far this year. He leads the team in receptions, and he was second on the team in receiving yards. But on the defensive side of the ball, the Wildcats will hope to slow down the Big Ten's leading rusher.
The big boys down in the trenches, Jalen Pate, Najee Story, Aiden Hubbard, they've done a pretty good job containing so far this season. One of the linebackers on Northwestern, Xander Mueller, he also went down. He was really the strength of the Northwestern defense.
Despite ranking in the upper middle class of the Big Ten in terms of rushing defense, the Wildcats will be seeing nightmares on film as they prepare for the Hawkeyes. Last week, Northwestern gave up 199 yards on the ground, the most they'd given up all season, while Iowa's Caleb Johnson averages a Big Ten leading 148 yards per game. But even if Northwestern's rushing defense is able to get back to early season form, there might be some opportunities for Iowa through the air.
Ore Adei was a cornerback for Northwestern that went down in the preseason. He got hurt. So it's a very inexperienced cornerback room, And so Theron Johnson is the veteran leader in that. He's been really solid.
Despite Johnson's efforts, the Wildcats' passing defense has seemed like a ghost to many of their opponents this season. Northwestern ranks near the bottom of the Big Ten in passing yards given up, despite the play of Theron Johnson, who leads the Big Ten in pass deflections. Colin, there could be some opportunity in the air if Iowa's able to take advantage of it, but that really hasn't been their game this season.
Absolutely not. Every time I see them take the field, Cade drops back, I think, play's over. So it's just a quick depth. We'll see if they improve it this week.
Yeah, they'll certainly have a chance this week, but now it's time to send it to DITV Sports Director AJ Reister for a look around the Big Ten.
Thanks, guys. Halloween isn't here quite yet, but we've already had some scary upsets across the nation. Every weekend, it feels like no one is safe. I mean, Kennesaw State won this week. What is going on? So in picking games this week, be wary and have your head on a swivel for some more wild upsets. But first, let's take a look at some big games happening in the Big Ten, starting in Columbus, where the 4th-ranked Buckeyes will host unranked Nebraska. The Cornhuskers are coming off an embarrassing 56-7 loss to then 16th-ranked Indiana. Dylan Raiola threw 3 interceptions, and the defense allowed nearly 500 yards of total offense. The Hoosiers' starting quarterback even got hurt in the first half, and they were leaning on their backup Tavon Jackson, and they still got lit up. This weekend will be even tougher against the Buckeyes, who are coming off a bye week after their heartbreaking 32-31 loss to Oregon 2 weeks ago. This offense, though, is still one of the most explosive in the nation, ranking 6th in total offense. The biggest thing that Ryan Day and this offense will need to improve on to avoid the upset again is clock management. Ohio State is a 25.5-point favorite, and kickoff is at 11 a.m. on Fox. Elsewhere in the Big Ten, the 20th-ranked Illinois Fighting Illini are headed into the jaws of number 1 Oregon. The Ducks rode that massive upset over Ohio State into a 35-0 beatdown of the Purdue Boilermakers last weekend. Dylan Gabriel was solid again, throwing for 290 yards and 2 touchdowns, but it was the run game that had their way, rushing for over 130 yards and combining for 3 touchdowns. The Illini continue to surprise the world, taking down the 24th-ranked Michigan Wolverines last weekend 21-7. Luke Altmaier struggled, going 9 for 18 for just 80 yards and a touchdown, but the defense forced 3 turnovers in a battle of the defenses in good old classic field position, which will have to be very different this weekend against the Ducks. Oregon is a 21.5-point favorite, and kickoff is set for 2:30 on CBS. Now finally, the non-conference game of the week. The 24th ranked Navy will host 12th ranked Notre Dame in a classic showdown of historic proportions. For the first time since 1960, Army and Navy are ranked, and everyone and their mother, including me, is praying for a ranked Army-Navy game and possibly, maybe, if our dreams could come true, a potential playoff game that features the future armed forces of America battling on the gridiron. The midshipmen are coming off a 51-17 beatdown of Charlotte last weekend, but boy, this will be a true test on whether this team is for real. Notre Dame has had a roller coaster of a season and have battled their way back to a top 15 ranking. The Irish, since their loss to Northern Illinois, has been averaging 41 points per game. The running back room of Jeremiah Love and Riley Leonard has been an absolute wagon, combining for over 900 yards and 17 touchdowns. This game has the potential to be absolutely epic, and you can bet your butt my eyes will be glued on this game. Notre Dame is a 13.5-point favorite, and kickoff is set for 11 a.m. on ABC. Gentlemen, that's a look around the Big Ten and the nation. What games are you most looking forward to?
Thanks, AJ. Now, Colin, I've got Vanderbilt, Texas. Can Vandy do it again? Can they take down another Titan of the SEC? That's the game I'm excited for this weekend.
I pray that happens, Brady. But the game I'm looking at, a Big 12 matchup that would keep two teams in contention for that championship game at the end of the year. Cincinnati takes a trip out to Colorado. Everyone expected Colorado in this spot, but Cincinnati, been a little bit of surprise this year. Shout out to my boy Luke Kandra, All-American lineman for them. But hey, we'll see if they can pull off that upset out in Boulder.
A lot of great games this weekend, Colin, but now it's time to take a look at this week's Kid Captain. DITV's Joel Keller has the story.
The Lovell family's life took a major turn during the July 4th weekend in 2022. Their 4-year-old daughter, Adeline, was not her typical energetic self and showed other symptoms of sickness.
She had been kind of tired and just had some nagging illnesses that wouldn't go away for a few weeks. And we noticed what we thought was a rash on her back. And it turned out that it was not a rash. It turned out to be petechiae, which are these tiny little pinpoint, essentially bruises of blood vessels bursting underneath the skin.
The family's physician urged them to go to the University of Iowa Stead Children's Hospital, where she was diagnosed with leukemia.
There's so many emotions that you feel all at once. There's just so much going on. I mean, your entire world just flips upside down in a moment.
Adeline experienced the wave on October 1st, 2022 when Iowa played Michigan. She was hospitalized due to a reaction to chemo.
There are just no words to describe what it feels like when it actually happens. And 70,000 people turn around and wave at your daughter, who is facing just a really difficult trial. And I mean, it's just like, wham, hits you, right in the heart.
The wave wasn't the only thing that lifted the spirit of the Lovells. A golden retriever named Nacho acted as a beam of hope for Adeline in the hospital.
I liked when he would sit on me and lick on me, cuddle me, and I liked giving him a treat.
Now Adeline will be the kid captain at the homecoming football game this weekend, and her story will be shared with 70,000 fans.
It's surreal to even think about, especially when you think about where Ad has been and where we've come along this journey.
I'm gonna wave and do cartwheels.
However, this isn't the only important date in the near future for Adeline. She will take her last chemo pill next week. From the University of Iowa, I'm Joel Keller, DITV Sports.
Thanks, Joel. Great story there, Colin, as always. But now it's time for predictions. Last week, Iowa football played the biggest possible trick they could on me as producer of this show. They lost, and nobody picked Michigan State. So the championship belt was banished to the spooky zone this week. And for us to get it back, we're going to have to give our predictions, and hopefully one of us is right, and we get that belt back. But first, let's hear what Sydney Goldberg has to say for her Hawkeye highlight and score prediction.
Well, Brady, I may have talked about him before, but lucky for you, you get to hear about him again. That's right, my Hawkeye highlight is Jacob Gill. After starting the year off strong, he has been quiet recently, and I think that playing against his former team will bring the fire out of him once again. In Iowa's win over Troy, he had a career-high 5 catches to lead them to victory, and I think this weekend will be big for him once again. Now for my score prediction. The game will not be easy for the Hawks coming off a loss, but I do think that it'll motivate them to pull out the win. I have the Hawks winning 20-10, which when the Hawks have been dominant is a low-scoring game, but I'm confident in my prediction this week. Now I'm going to send it over to Elise to see what she thinks this weekend is going to bring and hear her prediction.
Thanks, Sydney. For my Hawkeye highlight, I'm going with linebacker Nick Jackson. On the year, Jackson has 50 tackles, the second most on the team, following linebacker Jay Higgins, 11 of those last Saturday night against Michigan State. That was his second game in a row with tackles in the double digits, and he is now in third place in the FBS career tackles history. Now, although the Hawkeyes took a terrifying loss against Michigan State last week, I do think they'll be able to redeem themselves this weekend. It most likely won't be a pretty game, but I still have the Hawkeyes coming out on top 27-10, winning against Northwestern for the fourth time in a row and tying the bow on their happy homecoming. Both these teams prefer running the ball, but Iowa does it better, and if their defense regains its strength after last Saturday, they will be golden against the Wildcats. If we're looking to get real scary here, I'll give you a jump scare warning before sending it off to my good friend AJ for his predictions.
Elise, last week was embarrassing for all of us. I think for once we can agree. And that's why this week I did a little extra research in preparation for this game. But first, for my Hawkeye highlight, I've got Drew Stevens making a big impact. Last year, he won the game for the Hawkeyes, and I expect Iowa to lean on him again. Last week, he did miss his only field goal attempt, but we all know he's got a thunderous thigh, so I expect him to get back on track this weekend. And as for my prediction, I do have the Hawkeyes winning this one 17-14. The offense didn't look terrible last weekend, with Caleb Johnson going against a defense that allows over 240 passing yards per game. I expect Cade to have some chances to find the end zone after Tim Lester's motion spreads out a struggling pass defense. That's what I've got, guys. Colin, what do you think will happen this weekend?
Yeah, thanks, AJ. For this week, I'm going to be looking at Kyler Fisher for my Hawkeye highlight. Last week, Kyler picked up 4 tackles, 2 of those being solo against Michigan State, and he stepped up with Sebastian Castro missing from that game, and while Castro is back for this game, it's still an important piece of this defense, and I believe he's highly overlooked of this Hawkeyes team. I like the way he can read the field and run downhill to consistently make these tackles. It's little things like these that add up when he's trading reps that can supplement a defensive production. As for my prediction, Brady, we heard it from you earlier. This is a battered up Northwestern team, so seems like a treat for this game, but we all know the Big Ten, every game is just a trick. And that's why I believe Iowa will pick up a win and take down the Wildcats 28-7. Ignore the play last week. They still scored 20 on offense, and they're still going to continue to score this week. I just hope the defense can get back on track with Kyler Fisher, the supplement.
Colin, I like where your head's at with that prediction there, but before I tell my prediction and my Hawkeye highlight, I did talk to Henry, so we're going to see what he has to say about this weekend.
Yeah, I think this is a must-win game for Northwestern if they want any chance of being in a bowl. Down the stretch, they still have to play Ohio State, Illinois, and Michigan. You got to get those 2 or 3 wins somehow. Player to watch for, I would say, CJ Johnson. He's the wide receiver that's stepping up. Showed some good stuff at spring ball, but hasn't really done too much this season. As far as the score prediction goes, I think this is going to be a game that the Sickos committee is going to be a big fan of. I think it's going to be sloppy. I think it's going to be ugly. I'm going to say 17-13 Iowa. I think Caleb Johnson has a career day, and I don't think the Northwestern defense can contain him.
Colin, even Henry has Caleb Johnson having a big game this week, but now it's time for my predictions, and I'm hoping to save that beautiful belt from that vengeful spirit of the studio. But first, my Hawkeye highlight. This week I've got my eye on the grave digger, Aaron Graves. Who else could it be this week? He's got 5 sacks so far this year. He's forced 2 fumbles. Graves and the defense as a whole didn't have the tackling day they wanted against Michigan State, but this week I have them getting back on track. And for my score prediction, I've got Iowa winning 23-10. The defense will get back on track, lock in on the fundamentals, and take advantage of Northwestern's offense while Caleb Johnson does what he does every other week.
Brady, if we're trying to get the belt back, again, we all picked against Northwestern. We all went for Iowa. I know it's a game they're supposed to win, but we might be in trouble again for the 2nd week in a row.
Yeah, Colin, I am a little worried about that fact. I'm really hoping to get that belt back on the show next week, but hopefully we'll see what happens this weekend. Hopefully one of us is right, but that is all we have for you today. Thank you, Sydney, Elise, AJ, Henry, and you for tuning in to Before the Kickoff.
Be sure to check out the Daily Iowans YouTube page and website for all the latest on Hawkeye sports. From the University of Iowa, Colin Carruthers.
I'm Brady Barron. Have a spooky weekend of football.